we stand together, we'll never fall.
Hi there, and welcome back to another episode of the All Around Growth Podcast. My name is Rob Kaiser, and I am your host. And in today's episode, we are going to have a conversation on different communication styles between generations. And I understand that these conversations are a bit one-sided, but that is how this podcast works. If you are new to the show or returning to the podcast after a while, this is a show where we talk about personal growth and development through finding balance in life. Now, I am of the opinion that we cannot fully grow and develop our full potential as human beings unless we live a balanced life in several different areas of our life. Now, accordingly, for the purposes of this discussion and really all discussions recently, what we do in the show is we compartmentalize, for lack of a better term, our lives and take an in-depth look at each area of life in each episode. And we rotate through these topics on a regular basis. We routinely discuss topics relating to financial, physical, personal development, family, spiritual, social, and career. And we do so in that order. For example, last week's episode was on a spiritual topic. The week prior was on a family topic. And next week's topic will be career oriented. And will probably be a discussion of how I ended up where I am with regard to my own career. And like I mentioned, today's episode is an episode on the social aspect of life. And the idea behind the show comes from the audience in a comment from our Telegram group, which you can join at t.me/allaroundgrowth. And, for those of you who are interested in connecting with myself and the audience a little bit further, I would encourage you to join us there, for that is the social media platform where we are most active. Now, before I get into the comment itself, today is March 4th, 2023. This is episode number 497 of the show. And the topic of the show is From Boomers to Zoomers, a discussion on different communication styles between generations. Now, the comment that really got me thinking about the different communication styles between generations is from a listener in the audience in his mid to late 40s, somebody around my age. And he's got a son in his early 20s. And recently we were having all sorts of comments, all sorts of dialogue about all sorts of things. And he writes, quote, "My son's in a bad rut socially. All his old university friends have ghosted him. Specifically, one by one, they have blocked him from texts, calls, various social media, etc. They have been falling like dominoes. It's almost like someone back there is spreading rumor or pressuring people to do this. It's one thing to not respond to texts, but blocking people on Instagram or Snapchat is very intentional. Back in my day, the worst thing we did was ignore someone, but usually we would try to politely say we weren't interested. I'm not sure how to advise." Now, because the Telegram group has grown into a tight-knit community of people I would like to consider friends, there was a fair amount of feedback on this comment, and I wanted to dive deeper into it. And today we are going to do exactly that. We're going to take a look at the different communication styles between generations. And moreover, I'm going to walk you through how I do this, and then discuss some solutions on how we can improve upon our own communication styles with other people and society in general. So, first of all, I'd like to read a couple of articles about the topics in question. And within that comment, I see three different topics that are worth taking into consideration and discussing. One being communication between generations, hence the title of the show. Two, social media usage by generation. And three, the impact of social media on relationships. Now, to find articles to read on these matters, I utilize a search engine. All right. And a search engine is a software system designed to carry out web searches. Now, they search the World Wide Web in a systematic way for particular information specified in a textual web search query. All right. The search results are generally presented in a line of results, often referred to as search engine result pages or SERPs. And when a user enters a query into a search engine, the engine scans its index of web pages to find those that are relevant to the user's query. The results are then ranked by relevancy and displayed to the user. The information may be a mix of links to web pages, images, videos, infographics, articles, research papers, and other types of files. Some search engines also mine data available in databases or open directories. Unlike web directories and social bookmarking sites, which are maintained by human editors, search engines also maintain real-time information by running an algorithm on a web crawler. Now, why did I share that? Well, I shared it because these are the things that we use on a day-to-day basis, but I don't really think we understand what they are. All right, so that definition comes from Wikipedia, and I know some people out there take issue with Wikipedia, think there's better sources of information for information in general, and I'm not going to disagree with that. But more often than not, when it comes to providing a brief synopsis of something, I find that Wikipedia generally does a pretty good job of doing that. So that's why I read it. And I think that when it comes to discussion about these things that we use so frequently, we come to take them for granted. And I think it's important to understand what a search engine is. Now, there are many different search engines available. And over the last year or so, I have been using Presearch. All right. And for those of you who aren't familiar with what Presearch is a decentralized search engine that provides search choice, quality results, privacy, and rewards those who want to end the search monopoly that other search engines have. And, search engines like those that you're commonly familiar with, Google, Bing, so on and so forth, right? But Google seems to be the predominant one that most people use. So the next question about Presearch might be, what is decentralized and what does it mean? All right. So from an article titled Centralized versus Decentralized Structures, 7 Key Differences, from Indeed.com, this is an article that, I'm going to go ahead and link to this because this is an article that is not coming up on my web browser. So what I'm going to do is disregard that for now, but I'm just going to leave it out there and say Indeed.com. The article is titled Centralized versus Decentralized Structures, and it indicates that a decentralized organization promotes a faster and smoother flow of information between different departments and from upper management downward. Industries that depend on a constantly shifting and inconsistent market benefit from being able to update everyone at will. All right. Now, I am interested in faster and smoother flows of information and thus use pre-search, but I am always open to new alternatives with regard to internet browsing. So if you have a search engine of choice, then by all means, feel free to drop it in the comments section so that myself or anyone else watching can check it out. Now, one other reason that I enjoy using pre-search is that it's very easy to navigate between other search engines like Google, Bing, Yandex, DuckDuckGo, and many other options. You can customize it however you want. And because quite frankly, sometimes I prefer the way Google shows its search results. Like, for example, Google shows you the dictionary definitions of words right from the search page without you having to open any link whatsoever. There's also a number of plugins and add-ons and browser extensions that you can use that are search engine optimized that allow you to utilize and do work or utilize the web and do work a little bit differently, a little bit more efficiently. So, for searches like this, with just a single click of the button, I can switch from Google right to pre-search and, vice versa. And it makes it an easy way to quickly access the information that I'm seeking. All right. So what information am I seeking tonight? As previously stated, based on the comment from the Telegram group about a listener's son being in a bad rut socially on account of friends ghosting him and blocking him from texts, calls, and social media, the three different topics that are worth taking into consideration and discussing are social media styles between generations, or communication styles between generations, rather, social media usage by generation, and the impact of social media on relationships. So let's take a look at some articles that result from searching each of these topics. And now I've looked at some of these, but not many. So this is really going to be a search and share on the fly for the sake of time with regard to the amount of time that I put into the show notes today. So hopefully this won't be too confusing for those of you listening out there without the video. But this is also a good time to promote the fact that over the next couple of months, the podcast will be going away in its current form and transitioning to only the most recent 90 days of content. And that's going to take place while I continue work on getting all past episodes up on YouTube, but that's going to take some time. And exactly how I'm going to do that, I'm not entirely sure, but that's the plan. And if you've got any ideas about that, then by all means, feel free to let me know. You can send me an email at allaroundgrowth@gmail.com. You can join the Telegram group at t.me/allaroundgrowth. You can join us on social media. All of the links to all of that is in the description below. But let's go ahead and take a look at this article. And the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing is in large part to reduce my financial expenditures, like I've discussed in past episodes. I still plan on performing the podcast, but as it's always been, it will continue to change just as I continue to change. All right. So let's go ahead, take a look at some of these articles and see what we've got going on. This is one that I did take a look at earlier. It's called Bridging the Gap: How Generations Communicate. And it says in the little synopsis here, the generational gap is one of the biggest reasons for intergenerational disconnect. The largest generational gap is between the baby boomer, classified as being born more or less between 1946 and 1964, and the millennial generation, classified as being born more or less between 1980 and 2000. And then, of course, we've got the Zoomers, Gen Z, which is where the title of this show comes from. All right, from boomers to Zoomers, discussion on different communication styles between different generations. Now, this white paper is interesting, and this was the first one that I read, and it reads that, well, they did a study, and in this study, the effects of the impact of that new forms of communication have had on the generation's communication methods are intergenerational disconnect are examined. An example that inspired this research study is the grandparent-grandchild situation. Grandparents love to be able to talk to their grandchildren regardless of the method. And whether that is over the phone or face-to-face, the grandparent generation mostly consists of those born in the baby boomer generation or Gen X generations. All right. However, most grandchildren of these groups fall into the millennial generation or the Zoomers. Now, while these grandparents would rather talk verbally or face to face, it seems that most grandchildren would rather text. And then they also write that this split in generations has caused a disconnect between common intergenerational groups, such as grandparents and grandchildren. All right. So, in addition to texting, we see this disconnect not only within grandparents and grandchildren, but the article or this particular white paper goes on to indicate that we also see this in the working world and through organizational communication. And it's a good article. It's quite lengthy. I'm not going to share the whole thing with you now, but what is important is the fact that there indeed is a gap and a problem, if you will, with regard to generations, the generational differences in how they communicate with each other. And like this white paper just demonstrated, a lot of it has to do with different forms of communication, how older generations like to talk face to face, on the phone, and younger generations prefer text, and even the newest generations prefer social media. All right. So, one thing that's interesting about this is it says the gap between baby boomers and millennials is staggering, but Generation Xers find themselves in the middle of the two, sometimes overlapping in both directions, serving as a mediating generation, meaning that we've oftentimes got to serve as a middleman between the boomers and between the millennials, and ultimately between the Zoomers, which is what really prompted this particular topic of conversation tonight. So, text is one thing, like we read in that message. Responding to texts or not responding to texts is one thing, but blocking people on Instagram, Snapchat, and other social media platforms, it's very intentional. Now, the audience member writes that back in my day, the worst thing we did was ignore someone, but we would usually try to politely say that we weren't interested. Now, we don't do that. We just block people. Why? Let's get into that in just a minute. Let's take a look at social media usage by generation and understand a little bit of the demographic breakdown of the generations and how they use social media and what social media they use. Okay. So we'll take a look at this article titled How Different Generations Use Social Media in 2022. And it looks like this was originally written last year. It has been updated. No, the article was originally written in 2021. It was updated in 2022. And it reads, in 2022, different generations of users are actively participating in social media. The statistics mentioned above clearly indicate over the years, barriers on social media have washed up. For example, Twitter is the most recognizable social media platform, and almost every age group is on Twitter. All right. What I want to see is a graph of some kind, just like this. All right. How different generations use social media. So we've got the boomers that 26% of them use social media daily. 11% of them use it a few times a week. 5% use it less than once a week. 2% use it once a month. 8% use it less than once a month, and 43% of boomers never use social media. All right. So with regard to Generation X, 37% use social media daily. Millennials, 44% use social media daily. Generation Z, half of today's children, the current generation, Generation Z, use social media on a daily basis. All right. And I think that that's probably increased. I don't know where this article comes from, wpsocialninja.com. I'm not very familiar with that, but what do they have to say about the impact of social media on different generations, right? So the impact of social media is like a Pandora's box. You never know what you are getting. Along with time, social media has evolved and influenced drastically. Not just shopping, but every decision we make is somehow connected with social media. And they do write, the active participation of different generations on social media has immensely increased. And according to Pew Research, in 2005, only 5% of Americans were active on social media. In 2011, social media numbers increased unexpectedly from 5% to 50%. And by 2020, 72% of Americans started using social media regularly. All right. So this chart right here shows the percentage of adults who say they use at least one social media site. And it indicates the statistics that I just read about 5% of Americans being active on social media in 2005 and 72% of Americans in 2020 were using social media regularly. All right. So what does that mean to me? What that means to me is that we've got more time invested in social media and less time invested in actual interpersonal relationships. Okay. So what? Well, what's the result of that? Well, the result of that is basically the comment that I started to read from earlier. People ending up in a bad rut socially, having friends ghost them. Specifically, one by one, they have blocked this individual's son from texts, calls, various social medias. They've been falling like dominoes, he writes. Almost like someone back there is spreading a rumor or pressuring people to do this. It's very intentional. It's hurtful. It's harmful to our social lives. It's harmful to how we interact interpersonally as humans. It's harmful to the social dynamic that we've grown and evolved into. This isn't the way that we were meant to behave. This isn't the way that we were meant to be. Over time, historically, the only way that humans were able to get by, for lack of a better term, was with their community. And your community was relegated to where you lived, where you were born in large part, unless you traveled and left your hometown, your village, your tribe, your family, and moved somewhere else. And more often than not, when you moved somewhere else, you found a new tribe, a new village, new people to interact with. But now we can do that selectively. We can engage in virtual communities online. We can be very selective about who we want to engage with and why we want to engage with them. It's far too easy to find ourselves in echo chambers, surrounding ourselves with people of like mind, not realizing that our own minds may be sick, not recognizing and acknowledging the fact that our own minds may be twisted, that we may be broken people. You know, think about life like a hospital. Everyone in the hospital is generally sick. You've got some people in the hospital that are there to take care of the ones that are more sick than others. But at some point in time, even the caretakers have to go to the hospital to be taken care of by other caretakers. So inevitably, at some point in time, we all land in the proverbial hospital, and that hospital is life. We all have to take care of one another, or at least we should. When we don't engage in real life, or when we decrease our engagement in real life, and when we decrease our actual true interpersonal relationships with different demographics, with different people, different ethnicities, with people outside of those that are like ourselves, it begins to radically impact us in negative ways. But we can't see that because we're too busy looking in the mirror or looking outside at other people in these communities who are looking in the mirror or looking out the window, and all they're seeing is reflections of themselves, feeling as though they've got the sense of community because it engages something in our brains, this natural human instinct that I think we all have because we've been around for millennia in the ways, shapes, and forms that we currently are to this day. But much like artificial sweeteners in diet sodas, I'm of the opinion that even though it's an artificial sweetener, it still triggers that mechanism in your brain that acts as though you're experiencing something sweet, which is why, as far as I can tell, people with diabetes, for example, can still have negative responses from consuming drinks with artificial sweeteners instead of sugar itself. The brain doesn't really know that much difference, even though chemically it's not the same. The brain doesn't know that much difference between social media and actual social interactions. So let's take a look at the impact of social media upon relationships. All right. So the first article says, how does social media affect relationships? The synopsis reads, although social media has many positive benefits, it has the potential to wreak havoc on a relationship. Some of the negative effects of social media and relationships include decreased time with a partner, missed connections, jealousy, conflict arising from disagreements or hurt feelings, and negative comparisons. A very succinct and complete synopsis. So this article is from a website called choosingtherapy.com, and the article is titled Social Media and Relationships. So I'll go ahead and read the introductory paragraph, and I'll read some of the negative effects on social media on relationships, the positive effects of social media on relationships, and also some signs that social media is affecting your relationship. Because again, these are lengthy articles. I will try to go back and update the show notes accordingly with what I've read for those of you who watch in the future and those of you who are listening to this in podcast form so you can see what it is that I'm talking about. But social media can connect us, but there are also pitfalls. It may be a problem if your relationship, it may be a problem in your relationship if you and your partner are having conflicts over or spurred by social media or are spending less quality time together. If this is the case, there are steps you can take to keep your relationship strong and put social media in its proper place. And I'm going to get to that in just a second. Some solutions that we can implement in our own lives in order to address this. All right. So what are the negative effects of social media on relationships? Although social media has many positive benefits, it has the potential to wreak havoc on a relationship. Apparently, I just read that. Yeah. Social media can connect us, but there are also many pitfalls. Although social media has many positive benefits, it has the potential to wreak havoc on a relationship. Some of the negative effects. Yeah. Okay. So those are the negative effects. Decreased time with a partner, missed connections, jealousy, conflict arising from disagreement or hurt feelings, and negative comparisons. You can read more about that in the article, but let's take a look at some of the positive effects that social media might have on relationships. Social media also has the potential to positively impact your relationship. According to one study, positive impacts can happen through partners' public expressions of affection and mutual information sharing. For some, it gives them peace of mind knowing what their partner is up to. That is what this article reads on the positive effects of social media. Mutual information sharing, public expressions of affection, and peace of mind knowing what our partners are up to. Isn't that something that we might actually want to engage our partners with in the form of dialogue in real life? I don't know. That's just me. So here are some signs that social media is affecting your relationship. Hopefully, social media is impacting your relationship positively or not at all. But if you are like most couples, social media, and this is not just limited to couples, this is limited to friendships, parental relationships, relationship with children, relationships with friends, relationships with anybody, relationships, period. Okay. Not simply romantic relationships with your partner. All right. So let's just get that out of the way. So hopefully social media is impacting your relationship positively or not at all. But like most people, social media may be impacting your relationships in a negative way. If so, it is important to recognize the signs early so you can take action before too much damage has been done. Here are some signs that social media is affecting your relationship. Decreased quality time together, particularly in the evenings, which should be time for the two of you to reconnect at the end of the day. Maybe that's more pertinent to romantic relationships, or it could also be pertinent and relevant to friendships that you have or other types of relationships with people that you've grown away from. Other signs are a feeling of distance or disconnect. Another sign that social media may be affecting your relationship is learning about important events in your partner's life through social media instead of directly from them. Another sign that social media is affecting your relationship is obsessively checking your partner's social media to make sure they are not doing something you disapprove of, or checking your friend's social media to make sure they are not doing something you disapprove of, or checking your teacher's social media, or checking anyone's social media to make sure that they are not doing something you disapprove of. If you're obsessively checking social media and checking social media profiles to stay on top of someone in your life, then that, my friends, is a sign that social media is affecting your relationship with that person and likely affecting you as a person. All right. Another sign that social media is affecting your relationship is an increase in conflict regarding social media use, posts, etc. Another sign that social media is affecting your relationship is secrecy between the two of you regarding your social media accounts and posts. And ultimately, last but not least, we've got negative body image issues due to comparisons or unrealistic standards on social media. Comparison trap that kills us, right? So the article goes on and lists different tips for reclaiming your time and your relationships, where to find relationship help, and ultimately some final thoughts on social media and relationships from this article before I talk freely about these three topics: communication styles between generations, social media usage by generation, and the impact of social media on relationships. The closing thoughts on this article reads as follows. Social media can help people stay connected to family and friends, but it can negatively impact other relationships. You do not have to ban social media from your lives completely to stop that from happening. With some awareness, communication, and boundaries, you can positively shift the impact social media has on your relationships. Now, what's interesting is that here I am talking about this topic, and I'm doing so broadcasting it on social media platforms. For those of you who aren't aware, I've taken this podcast from its traditional podcast format, which was just an audio recording, and I have begun streaming it to Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. All right. Why do I do that? Why am I sitting here talking about the pitfalls and the negative aspects of social media while on social media? That may not make sense, but this is the reality of the world that we live in right now. Social media is an integral part of our lives collectively as humans, and we can't simply run away from that which we don't like or that which we find problems with. Okay. Part of this show is about finding the problems, identifying the problems, and ultimately talking about solutions to the problems. So, what are the solutions? Well, all I can do is share my own experience. Okay. And my experience is trying to find balance in all of these aspects of life, including but not limited to my social life, financial, physical, personal development, family, spiritual, social, and career. When we find balance in those 7 aspects of life, we can better understand what's going on in life and ultimately within our own lives. Because I've reached the point where I believe that most of the problems that I observe in the world are really problems within myself that I'm failing to address. What do I mean? And how does that apply to communication styles between generations, social media usage by generation, impact of social media on relationships? Well, what I mean is that let's, for example, talk about finance, right? I found myself experiencing some financial difficulties. This is nothing new to me. Throughout my entire adult life, I've struggled financially because my understanding of the financial world was limited, for lack of a better term. I don't blame my parents. I don't blame my schooling. I don't blame the education system. I don't blame anyone in my life for my inability to learn because the information was all there, but I failed to actually implement and understand some of the things that I learned. So accordingly, and most recently, I found myself deeply in debt. And I realized, how do I get out of debt? Well, if you go into one of these search engines that we talked about before and simply type that in, how do I get out of debt? You're going to find all kinds of responses. One of the ways, and in my opinion, it is the most effective way to get out of debt and get a better handle on your finances, is to embrace the tools and resources that are promoted by Dave Ramsey in the form of Financial Peace University. And how do you do that? What does that consist of? It consists of connecting with people in your community in the course Financial Peace University and joining in a fellowship together of people who are trying to do the same thing that you were doing and working this program together. And that program consists of 7 baby steps. 1, set up a baby emergency fund. 2, use the snowball method to pay down your debts. 3, establish a 3 to 6 month savings fund. And I could go on and on and on, but you get the point. The point is you've got this fellowship there of people who are focused on achieving a common goal. And that goal, in this case, is financial peace. With a gym, with the physical aspect of life, one option you have is join a gym, get involved in some classes, get comfortable being uncomfortable. If you're in the Telegram group, as many of you are, you will know that this is something that I've been doing recently. I joined a gym. I've been going to some classes. I've been spending a lot of time getting comfortable being uncomfortable. I'm doing things I've never done before. I'm doing high intensity interval training. I'm going to spin classes. I'm doing things called Studio X or something. I don't even know what I'm doing. And you know what? It's extremely uncomfortable. It's extremely uncomfortable because most of these women or most of the people in these classes are women. And and most of the women in these classes are considerably older than me. And so not only am I the youngest person in there, but I'm also the only dude. And that, my friends, is kind of awkward. But you know what's happening? I'm forming relationships with these people. They're encouraging me. I'm seeing them improve themselves. And it's inspiring me to continue on this path of improving myself physically. With regard to personal development, there's all kinds of communities out there that you can get involved with and connect with people personally to improve yourself as a human being and find balance in life. One of these communities that you can do so is our Telegram group, t.me/all around growth. And, you know, or further participate in some of these other social media groups that are below, because we've got a diverse group of people that come from all walks of life that are trying to simply grow. And that is something that I very much appreciate. And I can see that. And you can also find ways in your own community to engage in personal development as well by participating in various volunteer groups, things like that, and just give back. So in order to receive, we've got to give. It's fundamental to understand that. Family, spiritual, like as far as family goes, make time with your family. Spend quality time with your family. No devices, no social media. I don't know what with your spiritual life, return to the church. Connect with people who have the same spiritual goals and objectives that you do. Church is a great place to start. It's not the only place, but it's a great place to start. You can find and reconnect socially in all of those ways. And ultimately, you can implement all of that into a career that is rewarding, financially viable, and more. And we're going to talk about that next week. Now, as far as, wrapping this up and utilizing social media to stay connected to family and friends, but understanding that it can negatively impact your relationships, it's important to understand that, yes, indeed, there are different communication styles between generations. And engaging in all of these things like Financial Peace University or different volunteer organizations, or going to a gym and joining classes and working out with older ladies, the Golden Girls, like I would never say that to their face because some of them might be offended at that, but connecting with people and doing things that put you outside of your comfort zone. Basically, what you're doing is you're surrounding yourself with people that you normally wouldn't surround yourself with. So what? What does that mean? What's the point? Well, it forces you to learn how to communicate differently. When you're around all these other people of different generations, different demographics, you have to learn how to get comfortable being uncomfortable. Otherwise, you're going to be perceived as a jerk, right? And, well, you'll learn that in some way, shape, or form. Social media usage has just become such an integral component of our lives that, you know, the comment to kind of circle back to this, I'm going to read it again. My son's in a, and this comes from the audience. My son's in a bad rut socially. All of his old university friends have ghosted him. Specifically, one by one, they have blocked him from texts, calls, various social medias, etc. They've been falling like dominoes. It's almost like someone back there is spreading a rumor or pressuring people to do this. It's one thing not to respond to text, but blocking people on Instagram or Snapchat is very intentional. Back in my day, the worst thing we did was ignore someone, but we would usually try to politely say that we weren't interested. And this is how it goes now. You know, this is how it is. I don't like what you have to say. I don't like what you did. I don't like something. Block. There are pros to this with regard to unfollowing or muting someone on social media, and that's a great way to eliminate some negativity from your life. Excuse me. I just inhaled some coffee. But to engage in these social media platforms in that way, it's wrong. It's wrong. And so why do they do it? You know, why do people utilize these platforms negatively and subsequently experience negative results in their relationships? I think the answer is they don't know any better. You know, we are teaching people that this kind of, whether we're teaching directly or indirectly, we're teaching people that this kind of behavior is okay, that it's acceptable. This isn't even passive aggressive communication, it's entirely passive. And it's disturbing because while there certainly are positive aspects to social media, I'm beginning to believe that the negative aspects of it are increasing. I don't want to say they far outweigh the positive aspects, but they're increasing. And the problem is we're becoming less and less aware of how they are increasing. We are becoming less and less aware of how social media operates in and of itself. We are becoming less and less understanding of the nature of the algorithm and how it works. The algorithm doesn't care. The algorithm seeks engagement. And the reality is, as humans, we're more likely to engage when we're angry, when we're upset, than we are when we experience something positive. Perhaps that's factually incorrect. And if you've got some data or some science to back that up, then I would encourage you to comment below and challenge me on this. But that's my belief. And I've got nothing to back that up on except my own personal experience and looking back at my life and how I've interacted with people. And more often than not, I've interacted more frequently than not when I've taken issue with something they did, something they said, something they posted, something they wrote, some way that they acted. I will likely engage more when I'm reacting to something negative than responding to something positive. And that's a problem. So I think what we need to do is encourage people to, you know, big air quotes right now for all the audio listeners, think positively. I mean, yeah, that sounds cliche, because it is cliche, right? So how do you just think positively, radiate good vibrations, bro. You spread love and, kindness into the air, random acts of kindness. There's nothing wrong with that, but like we actually have to mean it. We actually have to do it. And we have to do it consistently. And, children especially learn by doing, and what they do is what they see, and what they see is us. So if we're fully engaged on our devices, they will be fully engaged on their devices. And unless we actually make that dedicated time to talk to them about the nature of social media, the pros of it, the cons of it, and basically just engage with them like the humans that they are in all ways, then nothing will change and things will continue to stay the same. And quite frankly, in this case, they'll likely continue to decline. So I am of the opinion that the only way to recognize and acknowledge and understand effectively the different communication styles between generations is to actively engage in interpersonal communication with different generations. And you can do that by working within your community, by engaging in fellowship in activities of like mind, whether it's Financial Peace University or volunteer programs or book studies or church or discussion groups, whatever the case may be. There are ways to actually engage in real life. Meetup.com is a great way to do this. Yes, you're using a platform to do this, but the whole point of the platform is to meet up, right? We have to start living like humans again. We don't have the ability to understand. I mean, we can read these studies and read these white papers and read all of this all day long, but for what? Like, it's really, really important to understand that social media in all its ways, shapes, and forms gives us the idea and the feelings that we are having the social interaction, but it's fake. It's not real. We need to see people. We need to shake their hands. We need to be able to hug someone when they need it or want it, and be able to be receiving of a hug when we need it and maybe don't want it. We need to be receptive to things that make us uncomfortable but aren't harmful. It's the only way to grow. And unfortunately, the only way most people grow is when the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the perceived pain of change. Because honestly, that pain of change is short-lived. And if we're willing to go through a little bit of discomfort initially, very quickly do we begin to experience all of the positive that comes along with the change that we seek. So, guys, that's really all I've got to say on this particular topic, from boomers to zoomers, a discussion on different communication styles between generations. The reality is we are all different people, generations consisting of different geographic locations, different demographics, different ages, different genders, different whatever. But effective communication is critical. It's crucial for building strong relationships and achieving success in both personal and professional settings. And as these generations come and go, from baby boomers to Gen X to Gen Y, millennials to Gen Z and Zoomers, the generation and their own communicative styles changes as well. And perhaps now more than ever, it's increasingly important to bridge that gap between generations, because if we don't, we begin to lose our humanity. We begin to lose the very thing that made us who we are. Real quick, before we close out the show, I would like to take a moment to thank the show sponsors, Food Forest Farms, for allowing us to stream in the manner that we are. Check out the show notes in the description below for links to Food Forest Farms and see everything that they have to offer. Specialty roasted coffee, a fun hip camp, cool Airbnb, and of course, everything going on here at York Meadow Farm, bath and body products, fermented foods, things that you likely already consume on a daily basis at both locations, foodforestfarms.com and York Meadow Farm. And if you like what you hear here, consider supporting them there. We all would deeply appreciate it. And I hope that you enjoyed this episode, and I look forward to catching you next week on the next one. This is Rob Kaiser, and thank you.
In a world of pain, what can I do? The needs are many and answers are few. People turn away and I wonder why. If I can help somebody, then I want to try. People may think that it's odd that I believe in friendship and love. And truth is always the best way to the world that may seem odd. I'm an odd fellow. I'm an odd fellow. Whoa, whoa. I'm an odd fellow. If we stand together, we'll never fall. We can make a difference and answer the call. You know the times are wasting every day, and we can help somebody along the way. People may think that it's odd that I believe in friendship and love. Truth is always the best way to the world that may seem odd. I'm an odd fellow. You're an